Hello and welcome to the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program at the University of Providence. My name is Jared Roberts and I've been a professor in this program for about 6 years. So aside from welcoming you, I have some information I want to share with you. I'll be focusing today on more general information about the clinical experience here in the program. If you're in the cohort and you're following the cohort model, the program lasts for 3 years. It's a semester-based program, fall and spring semester with some summer classes as well. So the first year and a half of the program is focused on conceptualization, understanding concepts and principles, and skill building. And so that's the first 3 semesters of the program. Then as you move into the second half of the program, you begin the clinical phase of the program. It's still inclusive of skill building and you're continuing to build your knowledge base, but added to that are Practicum and Internship 1 and Internship 2, or 2 internship classes. So I'm going to share some information today about the clinical portion of the program. The first thing to be aware of is that the department and counseling faculty do have relationships with counselors primarily in Montana, but also in other states as well. And so faculty are able to, at times, point students in a direction and support them in finding a clinical site. But because our program is online, we very often have students that are in cities or areas where we've not had a relationship with a practice or an agency. And so the responsibility primarily falls on the student to find an agency where they can do their clinical work. Selecting an agency is based on a number of factors. One is your own personal interest in the mental health field. You may be interested in working with a particular issue or particular population, a particular setting. And so as you start to think about a site, consider what interests you most. It may be private practice, maybe a school, it may be a rehabilitation counseling center, it may be a larger institution like a hospital or a clinic. So that would be the initial starting point, is to start to generate some ideas about what interests you. Even though the clinical phase of the program doesn't start until the 4th semester, it is helpful, I think, to start building relationships and exploring and getting ideas of where you might want to do your clinical site. There is in the program a practicum and internship coordinator that will assist you in the process, as will all faculty in the program. So while the first semester is probably focused on just getting acclimated to the program, how it works, the faculty, how they grade, and those sorts of things, it's never too early to start keeping an eye out or looking for a potential site. Certainly as you move into the 2nd semester, that increases. And by the 3rd semester in the program, you should really be in earnest looking for, perhaps already have identified a site so that when the time comes, you're ready to transition into your new site. Faculty are available to meet with agencies, directors, and you're not responsible for providing them with all the information. We do have information sheets and supervisor expectation forms that can be helpful to pass along, but the faculty will work with you in the process of finding and securing a site. Generally speaking, our students, if they start early, really don't have a problem finding a site. Practicum and internship is a chance for students to get some real-life, hands-on experience doing actual counseling, but it's also great for agencies because they're able to offer a service to clients that they might not otherwise be able to. And a lot of times, students that serve as interns or do their clinical experience somewhere, that very often transitions into a job opportunity. So sites very often view themselves as potential employers, and it's a chance to develop somebody and transition them into an employee at some point. So, All right, I have some information that I want to share with you through some slides, and so I'll put those up on the screen now. And if you have any questions about anything that is being provided to you, you're able to email any of the faculty and answer those questions. But this will provide you with a general overview. Our CACREP accreditation, and you see what CACREP stands for, you've definitely heard that before, I would guess, is the guiding organization when it comes to how we organize and set up our clinical experience. I'm focusing on a few particular standards to emphasize some points today. The first one relates to in section 3 regarding professional practice. This includes practicum and internship, and it states that this experience provides for the application of theory and the development of skills under supervision. These experiences will provide opportunities for students to counsel clients who represent the ethnic and demographic diversity of their community. A couple things to highlight there. First of all, you'll be supervised throughout this entire experience by at least 2 supervisors. You'll have the on-campus program supervision that will be actual class time, where we will meet on a weekly basis for about 2 hours and discuss your client caseload. That includes group discussion, group feedback, and viewing of video recorded sessions to demonstrate skills and to get feedback. The other point that I want to emphasize, and make a mental note of this or a written note, this is very important, is that as you're exploring sites, it needs to be clearly understood that you will be doing counseling. It's not case management. It's not some other bachelor's level activity that they can perhaps bill for or participate in. This is applying the counseling skills in a counseling relationship, whether it be individual, couples counseling, family counseling, school counseling. And so again, just remember that you will actually be doing counseling. You'll be practicing and working on counseling. There's a good amount of research that shows that counseling interns provide a helpful and valuable service to clients, comparative to, if I'm thinking of just counseling centers, professional staff that offer the same service. And so while it is true that you're developing and applying skills in theory, you're also providing a valuable service. Okay. The coverage as far as liability insurance and making sure that what you're doing is ethical and professional is supported by the supervision that you receive on campus and also the supervision that you receive from a site supervisor at the site where you do your clinical work. It's expected that the site where you work will have somebody that is qualified in the state where you reside, and they reside and where you practice, to be a clinical supervisor, which will involve clinical supervision at least 1 hour per week. And this is where you, whether it's you or you and one other intern, will sit down with the supervisor and have clinical supervision to discuss your client caseload, review ethical dilemmas, and explore treatment options, treatment goals, and everything associated with your clinical practice. Is as a requirement for the program, you will be covered by professional counseling liability insurance through the American Counseling Association. That is offered as a free coverage for students who are members of the American Counseling Association, or ACA. So there's not a significant or large financial contribution to have that covered. Part of the practicum and internship includes making audio or video recordings of your interactions with clients. There are many ways to relay a session and to get feedback. The best way is to be able to view that as it occurred through a video recording. Not all clients will be willing or able to be video recorded, but just be aware that, and your site should be aware that that is a consideration, that is important in your development as a counselor. Being evaluated, being supervised, having your skills and sessions observed by others can be a little bit intimidating, but I'll say right now, and it will be reiterated throughout the program, that it's formative feedback primarily. Formative means that it's not a summary of your overall skill. It's not a summary of your overall ability as a counselor. It's formative in the sense that you're expected to be making mistakes, trying new things, and imperfect and developing. Formative feedback is the type of feedback that helps you to make the progress that you want as a professional counselor. It's good to keep that in mind simply because feedback about a clinical skill or development or a personal approach can at times be a little bit personal. There is some summative evaluation that fits with your skill level or your class level, and that's provided at the end of the semester by your site supervisor. And I'll share a little bit more about that later. But as a reiteration, primarily we're focused on formative feedback that will help you to have the information needed to fine-tune your skills, develop your skills, and integrate things into the treatment across a wide spectrum that will develop you into a professional counselor. All right, the included requirements means that you'll be exposed to a variety of professional activities and resources. Supervisors typically have, we offer different texts, different theories, different backgrounds, as ways, different trainings, including in this program and recommendations outside of the program for you to be able to develop your skills as a professional counselor. There are technological resources that we use in the program that you'll find more about later, but just be aware that because it's an online program, we rely heavily on the online format and resources for supervision and the components that go along with it. CACREP mandates that counselors in training do have some group experience, group counseling. CACREP doesn't mandate a specific number of hours, but in being consistent with other programs, we require 10 hours of group work. So you will have your site, and in some ways you will be required either at your site or through another site or a different method to also engage in group counseling as part of your clinical experience. I'm going to go over each of the classes now briefly. The practicum is separated from internship just by name and hours because it eases you into the clinical experience. The hours are a little bit lower, and the understanding is that your knowledge level and skill level is more entry. And so practicum says this is the first take, and the hours are lower as a way to adjust to the requirements. The 240 hours is inclusive of both direct and indirect hours. I will provide greater definition as you get closer of what constitutes indirect hours. There's a short list on this slide as well. Of the 240 hours during practicum, 40 of them are direct hours, and this is face-to-face counseling with individuals, families, or groups. Remember, it's not observing somebody else doing counseling. This is you doing the counseling experience. I've already mentioned the supervision. CACREP requires a certain number of supervision hours per direct contact hours, and in our program that amounts to 1 hour a week on site and 2 hours a week, at least one, but we do 2 hours a week in group supervision for class. The 200 direct hours for this class can be composed in many ways, including the supervision at site and during class at UP, any observations that you're asked to make at your site that relates to clinical skill, readings, videos that you're asked, trainings that are related to your site, all the paperwork that you do, the client files, the notes, the documentation, the trainings and the onboarding at your site are included in that process. Weekly classes, as I mentioned, and then also professional development activities. And faculty are here and supportive of students with ideas and anything that would be helpful for them should they fall under on their hours. I would say, generally speaking, especially in practicum, students do not have a problem getting indirect hours. It can be a little bit of a warm-up at site, which is why it's good to have a site identified early. In private practice, as well as internship, it takes time sometimes to build clientele. And so that's another reason why the hours are lower, to help you build steam as you move into internship. Now, students are not required to stay at the same site for each semester. Most often students do. They build relationships with professionals at an agency, and they also build relationships with clients that they like to continue through the clinical work. Now, if you are at a site and you find that you're interested in a different site, different atmosphere, different population, or if there's some other reason that moving becomes necessary to another site, that's not a problem. The director of the Practicum and Internship coordinator would be happy to assist you in that process. Now on to internship, and this happens 2 classes. So what the information you have here is for 1 class. So in the first internship semester, it would be now 300 work-related hours, and 120 of those would be direct hours. Similar with supervision, and then the math says that there's 180 indirect hours. We do this for 2 semesters, which ends up being a total of 600 work-related hours in internship. I'm going to say a little bit about what your supervisor at your site will do and also what you will do. Initially, it's just for you to gather information, to scout out sites, and to be ready when the time comes to sign an agreement, to introduce your site, potential site, and site supervisor to the internship and practicum coordinator, and to share with them any paperwork that's passed along for you. As I said, faculty are always willing to have those meetings. You're not expected to speak at length or in great detail, since it's all new to you as well. So sometimes it's a good idea to connect the potential site supervisor with a faculty member, and then they can answer questions more thoroughly. The supervisor will be responsible for familiarizing you with their site and their expectations. In many ways, we defer to the site. They're practicing based upon the state that they live on, the policies and procedures specific to that site. We provide a lot of forms and paperwork that can be used in the absence of site having those. And so we'll sort all that a little bit down the road as you get into that. I've already talked about the individual supervision. Triadic means that it would be your supervisor, you, and 1 other person. The site supervisor is expected to give you feedback, review your performance, and discuss any sort of evaluations with you. The end of semester evaluation that we provide is done through Microsoft Forms. And in addition to your supervisor evaluating you, you will also provide an evaluation of your supervisor, and you will do a self-evaluation where you rate yourself on a number of different scales around your own clinical skill set. So you keep a weekly log of your hours, and this will be useful when it's time for you to apply for licensure, and the site supervisor will sign off on those. So, all right, this is just a picture reference. This is an example of what the email form would look like. It would come in the email, you click on the link, and you would be good to go. So this has been a brief overview of the practicum and internship experience in the counseling program. The Practicum and Internship coordinator can offer further details, but again, I want to welcome you to the program. It's an exciting time. It's especially fun when students start their clinical experience, looking forward to seeing and working with clients. And so I wish you well as you start the program.